Hey guys, BaoZakeruga here. Today I'm reviewing Super Robot Taisen Original Generation for the Game Boy Advance. So without further ado, let's get started. If you're unfamiliar with the franchise, it might surprise you when I tell you that Super Robot Taisen Original Generation is actually a spin-off of a series of spin-offs. What do I mean by that? Well, let me explain. The Super Robot Wars series is a Japanese exclusive franchise that puts characters from various mecha anime together in one game. Or at least that's the simplest way I can put it without making your head explode. Most games take place in their own universe, with some games consisting of part of a series, like Super Robot Wars Alphas 1, 2, Alpha Gaiden, and Alpha 3. Think of pretty much any major Japanese mecha anime and there's a good chance it's been in a Super Robot Wars game. Gundam? Check. Voltron? Check. Code Geass? Yep, that too. Now, pretty much every Super Robot Wars game has its own cast of original characters designed specifically for that game, which is where the original generation saga that I'm reviewing today comes into play. It takes these original characters and puts them into their own game while adding even more original characters to the mix. Upon starting the game, you're given the choice of two main characters, Kyosuke Nambu and Ryusei Date. The game's narrative will closely follow whichever one you pick, but you will eventually gain control of both. Both stories are enjoyable and add replay value to the game for multiple playthroughs. Ryusei's story closely mirrors the events of Super Robot Wars Alpha for the PlayStation 1. Although if you're new to the series you won't know what the heck I'm talking about, so just know it's good. While Kyosuke's route has the setup for the plot of Super Robot Wars Impact on the PlayStation 2, and then in the second half of the game follows its own original but enjoyable story. In a nutshell, pick whoever you want. You'll have a great time, trust me. The Super Robot Wars series is known for great interwoven stories and this entry is no exception. On the surface, it's similar to the soldier perspective during times of war, with political corruption that the Gundam series has become known for. While enjoyable, I will admit it's very text heavy. Even for someone like myself who loves a great amount of story in my games, there were a few moments where I felt the scenes dragged on a bit too long. Now let's get into the most crucial part of the game, the gameplay itself. The game uses a pretty standard tactical RPG system. You move around on the grid and attack enemies when they get in range of your units. Ever played Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics? Well, you'll feel right at home here. Each unit has its own array of pre-equipped weapons ranging from machine guns to crazier things like telekinetic beam chalk rams, but you also have the option to give most of your units additional weapons of your choosing. The difficulty in Original Generation is rather unique. The difficulty setting depends on how many skill points you have. See, each stage in the game has a hidden skill point in it. It's an objective that can be as simple as destroying all enemies on the map, to something difficult like defeating a boss within a very limited time frame. The more skill points you attain, the harder the difficulty of the game. And the true final stage can only be accessed with attaining most of these skill points. Despite the difficulty setting, however, odds are you won't have too much trouble in the game, although a couple late game bosses might piss you off if you don't play smart. Even if the gameplay isn't your cup of tea, there's still much enjoyment to be had with the characters themselves. There's a lot of them and all are very likable and unique in their own ways. Don't be surprised if you catch yourself growing attached to them. The gameplay is fun and the story is very enjoyable, but one of my favorite things about this game is the amazing soundtrack. From the default stage music to the intense song that plays whenever something crazy is going on, it's all good. But hands down the best is the unique theme song almost every character has when battling. Ryusei's up-tempo and hard-hitting theme, Rai's calm and cool theme, the list goes on, and I love them all. This game truly has one of my favorite soundtracks ever. Even long after I tired of certain battle animations and turned them off, I would still let these songs play in the background, nodding my head along. Super Robot Taisen Original Generation is an amazing game. It's one of my favorite childhood games and one of my favorite games to this day. It's a game that introduced me to the whole Super Robot Wars series. It's a very criminally underrated game in the Western world and I highly recommend it to anyone.